She wasn't on the guest list. She wasn't a donor. She wasn't a veteran. She wasn't the wife, mother, or sister of anyone important enough to be standing in that ballroom. And yet, when the doors of the VIP section opened, an older black woman in a plain gray dress walked through them like she owned the building, and stopped a room full of decorated soldiers cold. Security moved in. Officers turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Because everyone in that room understood one unspoken rule. You do not walk into a classified military reunion uninvited. Everyone, it seemed, except her. What she said next to the most decorated man in the room would unravel a 20-year secret he didn't even know he was keeping. A secret buried inside 6 minutes of his own life he could never remember. Stay until the end. Because the truth about who she really is will change how you see every hero story you've ever been told. Colonel Marcus Webb had given his acceptance speech 11 times that week. Different rooms, same words. Tonight was the 12th. The Ridgeline Foundation Gala was the kind of event where medals outnumbered wine glasses. A fundraiser honoring the surviving members of Task Force Sentinel, the classified extraction unit that had, 20 years earlier, pulled off what military historians still called the impossible retrieval. Marcus was the face of that operation. The man in every photograph. The name etched into the plaque by the entrance. For extraordinary valor in the face of overwhelming odds. He shook hands. He smiled for photos. He let generals clap him on the back and call him a legend. But there was one detail Marcus Webb never mentioned in interviews, never included in his memoir, never spoke about even to his own wife. 6 minutes. Somewhere in the chaos of that mission, Marcus had lost 6 minutes of his life. Not foggy, not blurry, gone. Erased like someone had reached into his memory and cut the tape clean. His team swore he'd taken a head wound. The doctors called it dissociative amnesia from trauma. Case closed, medically speaking. But Marcus never quite believed that. Because in those 6 missing minutes, something had happened that saved all their lives, and he had no idea what it was. Tonight he wasn't thinking about that. Tonight he was thinking about his signature on programs and the open bar and getting home before midnight. That was until the doors opened. She didn't rush. She didn't sneak. She walked into the roped-off VIP section at a pace that suggested she'd been walking toward this exact moment for 20 years. Late 60s, maybe 70. Gray hair pulled back neat. A modest dress that had clearly been pressed with care but didn't belong anywhere near the sequins and dress blues around her. 2 security guards intercepted her within seconds. "Ma'am, this area's restricted." She didn't answer them. She looked past their shoulders, scanning the room, until her eyes landed on Marcus. Marcus felt it before he understood why. A prickle at the back of his neck, the kind soldiers learn never to ignore. He crossed the room himself, waving off the guards with practiced diplomacy. Better to handle it personally than let a scene ruin the Foundation's biggest night. "Ma'am," he said, gentler than the guards but just as firm, "you can't be back here. This section's for." "I know," she said. 2 words. "Come." Unbothered. Not the response of someone who'd wandered in by mistake. Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry? I know this section is restricted. I know exactly where I am." She met his eyes without flinching. "I need 5 minutes, Colonel Webb." Something about the way she said his rank, not Mr., not Sir, made his stomach tighten. "Do I know you?" "No," she said. "But you know what I did." Marcus asked security to give them space. Against every instinct of protocol, he asked them to step back. "Talk," he said quietly. 20 years ago, the woman began, your team was pinned down in a valley you were never supposed to be in. Your radio operator was dead. Your commanding officer was bleeding out. Your extraction point had been compromised for 11 minutes and nobody on your team knew it yet. Marcus went still. That information wasn't public. It wasn't in the after-action report. It wasn't in any book, any documentary, any classified leak. Only 7 people alive were supposed to know those details, and 6 of them were standing in this very ballroom. "How do you?" "You were unconscious for 6 minutes that night," she continued, her voice steady, almost gentle. "Not from the blast. From something else. You don't remember it. You've never remembered it. And it's eaten at you for 20 years, hasn't it?" Waking up at 3 a.m. trying to grab hold of something just out of reach. Marcus's jaw tightened. He hadn't told anyone that. Not his wife. Not his therapist. Nobody. "Who are you?" he said, and this time it wasn't a question, it was a demand. "I'm the reason you have 6 minutes you can't explain," she said. "Because I'm the one who was there." There is a story Marcus Webb has never told a journalist. A story only 6 other men in the world know firsthand. That night, when the team's radio should have been dead silent, destroyed according to every equipment log, a voice came through the static instead. A woman's voice. Calm. Precise. Guiding them through terrain she should have had no way of knowing, warning them of a patrol 40 seconds before it rounded the ridge, telling them exactly which direction led to an extraction point that hadn't even been radioed to them yet. For 20 years, Marcus and his surviving teammates believed that voice belonged to a ghost, a classified intelligence asset so deep in the shadows that her existence was never confirmed, never denied, never spoken of in any official capacity. They gave her a name among themselves, quietly, almost like a prayer. The voice. Marcus looked at the woman standing in front of him now. Ordinary. Unremarkable. Nothing like the operative he'd imagined for 2 decades. "It was you," he whispered. "You're the voice." He expected her to confirm it. He expected the 20-year mystery to finally close. Instead, she shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "I wasn't the one who saved your team." Marcus felt the ground shift under him for the second time that night. "Then who?" "I found your team's frequency because I was looking for it," she said. "I wasn't intelligence. I wasn't military. I was a translator working with a relief convoy 2 valleys over, and I had a radio that happened to catch your emergency channel by accident. I'm not a ghost, Colonel. I'm not classified. I'm just a woman who refused to switch the radio off once I heard how scared your men sounded." "Then why," Marcus said, "would you risk everything, your life, your position, for soldiers you'd never met?" For the first time her composure cracked just slightly. Her eyes glistened. "Because I recognized your name," she said. 3 years before that night, you led a rescue operation through a village north of the border. You pulled a group of civilians out of a collapsing building during a firefight nobody thought anyone would survive. You didn't file a report on it. You weren't even supposed to be there, off your assigned route, chasing radio chatter about trapped families. But you went anyway. Marcus's mind reeled backward, searching. It was true, there had been an unauthorized detour once, early in his career, one he barely spoke of. "One of the people you carried out that day," she said, her voice breaking now, "was a 7-year-old girl. Half conscious. Covered in dust. You gave her your canteen. You told her, in broken words she barely understood, that she was safe now." Marcus felt something cold move through his chest. "That girl," the woman said, "was my daughter." The room around them seemed to disappear. The music, the clinking glasses, the murmur of 400 guests. None of it existed anymore. Just 2 people and 20 years of unfinished truth. "When I heard your call sign on that radio 3 years later," she continued, "I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about the risk. I thought about the fact that the man who saved my daughter's life was about to die in a valley, and I was the only person who could stop it. So I stayed on that frequency for 6 minutes straight, walking your team through terrain by memory, praying you'd trust a stranger's voice enough to follow it." 6 minutes, Marcus repeated, the number finally making sense for the first time in 20 years. That's the 6 minutes I can't remember." "You weren't unconscious from an injury, Colonel," she said gently. "You collapsed from exhaustion and blood loss right as I finished guiding your men to the extraction point. Your team carried you the rest of the way. You never knew because by the time you woke up I was already gone. I never gave my name. I never wanted credit." "Then why are you here now?" Marcus asked. 20 years later. "Why tonight?" The woman reached into a small bag and pulled out a folded, faded photograph. A soldier crouched beside a dust-covered little girl, a canteen between them. "Because that day before you carried her to safety, you made her a promise," she said, her voice trembling now. "You told her that no matter what happened, she should always know that her mother loved her. You didn't know if I was alive. You said it anyway because you thought it might be the last kind thing anyone ever told her. Marcus stared at the photograph, and the memory, buried for over 2 decades under deployments and medals and moving forward, rose to the surface all at once. She's 27 now, the woman whispered. She has a daughter of her own. And for 20 years, I've carried one question I was never brave enough to ask until tonight. Ask it, Marcus said, his voice barely holding together. Do you remember what you promised her? Because I need to know if it was real, or if it was just something a soldier says to a frightened child to make the fear stop. Marcus Webb, the most decorated man in that ballroom, the soldier whose name was etched in brass by the front door, felt his composure finally give way. I remember, he said. I've thought about that little girl for 20 years and never known if she made it. I didn't forget the promise. I just never knew if I'd get the chance to keep it. The woman's tears finally fell, the weight of 2 decades leaving her shoulders in a single breath. She made it, she said. Because of you. Twice. Marcus looked around the ballroom, at the medals, the photographs, the plaques celebrating names the world would always remember. Then he looked at the woman in the plain gray dress the room had almost turned away at the door. You saved my entire team, he said quietly. And I never even knew your name. Adiz, she said, extending her hand for the first time. My name is Adiz. Marcus took it, and for a long moment, neither of them let go. He didn't introduce her to the generals. He didn't parade her before cameras or explain to the room who she was. Some heroes, he realized, never asked to be seen, they only asked to be remembered by the one person who mattered. That night, the most decorated soldier in the room finally understood something the medals had never taught him. The official record would always say he saved his team. But the truth only he and one woman in a plain gray dress would ever fully know, was that he owed his life to a mother who once made a choice twice, to save a stranger simply because he had once done the same for her. We build monuments for the heroes whose names we know. But sometimes, the person who saves everything never asks for a single line in the report. If this story moved you, let me know in the comments, and subscribe because next week we're telling the story of the nurse who refused to leave a dying stranger's side, and the secret she carried with her for 30 years.